You want me to put that on my Tudor?
This one's wife. Class versus Crass. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We know that the Prince of Pink Pancakes has his flaws. But when it comes to the old meet and greet, when it comes to his interactions with people, he conducts himself in an appropriate fashion. This is because he does have emotional empathy, and he has spent years effectively being taught how one does it. He was born into the royal family, and for as long as he can remember, he has been coached in the ways of dealing with people as a consequence of his position. Consequently, he's polite, he's courteous. He doesn't grab the microphone. He doesn't shove in front of anybody. He waits his turn. It's the shake of the hand, asks the question, he stands and chats. And you don't see him making the faux pas and blunders that his wife makes. This is a combination of understanding how he should behave and having been brought up that way so that it is natural to him. He, having been born into the royal family, has been imbued with that knowledge from the very beginning. It's fused into his DNA. He invariably will be able to do it without even thinking about it. But what about two women who weren't born into the royal family? Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and this one's wife, the Duchess of Sussex. Neither of them have this protocol and etiquette infused into their DNA as a consequence of birth, but rather are both commoners, one British, one American, who married into the royal family. We have seen with this one's wife her repeated crass behaviour, the invasion of people's personal space. I'm a hugger. The grappling of the microphone in an attempt to take over. Barging in front of Harry. Interrupting Harry's handshake for the purposes of moving in for a hug, whether it's wanted or not. Walking in front of the Queen. Ensuring she is always centre of the photographs. Ensuring that Harry is nudged, prodded, reminded with a tactile touch for the purposes of ensuring that she goes first. We all recall, I think it was in Morocco, when Harry, as a former member of the military and a born royal, would walk along the red carpet. This one's wife was directed to walk besides it. It wasn't for her. And we all know in that moment the ignited fury that would have emerged, but also it showed that thereafter, rather than deal with it graciously by waiting until he had finished walking along the red carpet and then walking to join him, she ought to walk along at the same time, face fixed, grimaced plastered across it, and she walked right next to the red carpet. You almost sensed that she was dying to put a foot on it just to demonstrate, hey, I'm royalty too. You will have many other instances of her crass behaviour when she has been in public. Now, at first, many people would have said, well, give her a chance. She's not used to all of this. There are two massive difficulties that she has. The first is she wasn't born into the royal family. She's not grown up with all of this. It's alien to her. And secondly, not only has she got the fact that she wasn't part of the royal family to deal with, but there's also the issue of cultural differences. She's American and has married into a British family. Therefore, there are certain cultural cues which she may not necessarily appreciate. Thus, initially, there might be those that would suggest, well, some of her failures and faux pas are as a consequence of her simply not being born into all of this, and it's not very familiar, so give her a chance, iron out these glitches. But the problem is, they've continued, haven't they? Repeatedly, we've seen them, and then you realise, or of course I recognised it from the very beginning because of what she was, but then as time has gone on, more and more people have realised that these failures, these faux pas, these transgressions aren't as a consequence of a lack of familiarity. They're driven by the fact that her crassness is underpinned by her narcissism. Now, in some instances, a narcissist would be able to accommodate the protocols and conventions because their facade management was up to the job of embracing it all by way of character trait acquisition, so that the narcissist would pass themselves off in a manner where they wouldn't make these faux pas. Her narcissism isn't up to the job. It isn't able to harness what she has been taught, what she's been instructed, the guidance that she was given by various members of the royal family and staff to help her. She hasn't been able to assimilate that because the narcissism has in effect rejected it. I know better. I'm a hugger, so I don't care about the fact that you say that I have to behave this way. I'm going in for the hug, and it doesn't matter if I do that when somebody isn't expecting it. It doesn't matter if I do it when somebody doesn't even want it. I'm a hugger. That's me being kind, you see. I'm not stuffy like all of you. It doesn't matter that I've interrupted my husband's handshake, because after all, I'm a hugger, and I get to do what I want. And there's all of the instances where she has interrupted, stood in front of, interrupted other people's speeches, barged in front of people, sought to get herself to the front, sharpened her elbows and moved people out of the way, in one instance literally elbowing them out of the way. This has all been driven by her narcissism, which basically is screaming at her, get those prime aims, get yourself in the centre, get noticed, make this about you. Because then that puts her in that position to control and draw fuel. Thus, as I mentioned, some narcissists would be able to, for want of a better description, behave themselves and embrace the appropriate method of conducting themselves by absorbing the protocols and conventions because their narcissism recognizes the benefit in doing so. For this one's wife, her narcissism rejects it, seeing it as a threat to control, and decides there's a much better way of dealing with things, which is to interrupt people, to walk in front of people, to elbow them out of the way, to push my husband to one side, to grab my husband to move out of the way, to impose myself in all of these situations. And her narcissism convinces her that she should do so. Indeed, in many instances, she won't even think about it, she will just do it. In other instances, she'll think, oh, I just need to move in here, and doesn't see that there's anything wrong with what she's doing, because her narcissism convinces her that it's appropriate for her to behave that way because it's her. And then you come to the Princess of Wales. She wasn't born into the royal family. She had to learn the conventions, abide by the protocols. But as a consequence of her boundary recognition, her emotional empathy for others, her desire to do the right thing as a consequence of her decency, her honesty, she will, of course, been very nervous at first, and there will be instances where she would have made some errors, teething errors, as she eased herself into the role. But you never see Catherine grabbing a microphone. You don't see her pushing William out of the way. You don't see her grabbing William's hand all of the time to guide him. You don't see her putting her hand on the small of William's back in order to manoeuvre him into a position. You don't see her refusing to move so that William can't get in shoulder to shoulder in a photograph. You don't see her barging her husband out of the way in order to receive the wrong beads. She doesn't do it because she knows how to behave, and her emotional empathy automatically causes her to behave in that way without her having to think about it. This class act of the Princess of Wales shines through in everything that she does. I should imagine there are times where she feels somewhat constrained by it all, because there is quite a strong independent spirit about her. But she recognises that she, in marrying into the royal family, agreed to a particular role, and she respects the role, whereas this one's wife doesn't, because this one's wife doesn't respect anybody. And a clear example of this class behaviour of the Princess of Wales compared to the crass behaviour that one witnesses in relation to this one's wife is shown once again in the letter writing. You'll recall not too long ago I compared the letter that was written by this one's wife with regard to her Nigerianness and the new title that she'd received. It was all about her. And as usual, she flaunted the title Duchess of Sussex, even though it's a title that she doesn't really care about. I showed you a letter that the Princess of Wales had written to a young patient at a hospital and the contrasting styles of the duo. Well, there's a further opportunity to see that difference in relation to a letter that the Princess of Wales has recently written. The Princess of Wales spoke of her pride in the Irish Guards as she wrote to apologise for missing a parade rehearsal on Saturday, demonstrating accountability, genuine apology, exhibition of emotional empathy. Catherine would usually attend the so-called Colonel's Review, held before the Trooping of the Colour, but is taking place away from her official duties after treatment for cancer. The letter was sent to them and was posted by the Irish Guards in a video on X showing the letter being read to members of the regiment. The Irish Guards were deeply touched to receive a letter from our Colonel, Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales, this morning, it said in the post. We continue to wish Her Royal Highness well in her recovery and send her our very best wishes, it added. So, what did this letter state? Well, let's have a look. The letter reads, Dear Sir Chris, I wanted to write and let you know how proud I am of the entire regiment ahead of the Colonel's Review and Trooping the Colour. I appreciate everyone trooping this year has been practising for months and dedicating many hours to ensuring their uniforms and drill are immaculate. Side point there, practising is misspelt. British English, it's a verb, it should have been with an S. Being your colonel remains a great honour, and I am very sorry that I am unable to take the salute at this year's Colonel's Review. Please pass my apologies to the whole regiment. However, I do hope that I am able to represent you all once again very soon. Please send my very best wishes and good luck to all involved. And she then quotes the Latin motto of the regiment and signs it Colonel Catherine. Notice she doesn't put Princess of Wales, that it's about other people. It's short, it's to the point, but it shows such good manners and the class that prevails with her. You contrast that with something that's written by this one's wife, and it's all about her and the use of the title and it containing, as usual, the fridge magnet platitudes. Whilst one, of course, would take into account a difference in letter-writing style, that this one's wife, of course, may be less formal as a consequence of her upbringing compared to that of Catherine, the fact remains that the content of this letter is worlds apart from anything that this one's wife would write. And it once again enables you to understand that the reason that this one's wife behaves in such a repugnant fashion, that she is so crass in the way that she conducts herself, isn't just because isn't about not being brought up properly. It isn't about a difference in cultural style, but it's driven by her narcissism. That, once again, explains her behaviour, because her narcissism is there governing what she does when it comes to other people. And therefore, because the narcissist must put her first, this results in all of the ill-mannered and impolite activities that she engages in. And thus, you see this complete contrast between the two women, and you now understand why that is. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.